The Wellness Revolution starts now.
Hello, I'm Dr. Steve Hotze, and welcome to today's program. We have with us a wonderful guest that we've had several times in the past, Dr. Carolyn Dean. Doctor, you're located now in Hawaii, aren't you?
I'm in Maui, right in the thick of the war zone.
Well, tell me briefly about that. We saw some town, Lahaina, kind of got burned to the ground. And I've been to Maui several times. Tell me, what about the rest of the island?
Well, there were three major sites of fires. One was up by a farm that I support, an organic farm called Okoa Farms. The farmer was sending me videos through the night, and we could see the flames, not far in the distance. And what happened, there's a hurricane, the winds blew up, winds of 70 to 80 miles an hour. Supposedly power lines went down, sparked off the dry brush, and three areas, one near me, one Lahaina, just devastated, wiped off the face of the earth. It's just horrifying what's happened. And they're still finding bodies because the heat was so intense. The bodies could possibly have been evaporated.
Gee, well, that's terrible. But anyway, You've been out in Hawaii, but Dr. Dean is both a medical doctor and a naturopathic doctor. She's been to medical college in Canada and to naturopathic medical college in Canada. So she's dual certified. Plus, she's got numerous other degrees. She's an acupuncturist. She's a nutritionist. She's a true holistic doctor. She does it all. But her main thrust over the last at least 20 years has been on focusing on a very important mineral, and that's magnesium. So tell us about magnesium and why magnesium is so very important for good health.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hotze, for having me. I appreciate being able to share this information. Magnesium is necessary for 80% of known metabolic functions. This report came out just a few years ago after I wrote the last edition of my Magnesium Miracle book. So 80% of known metabolic functions. So I just have to be shouting it from the rooftops that if people aren't saturated with sufficient amounts of magnesium, they're going to have anything from scalp tension to headaches to eye twitching to throat irritation when they swallow to hiatal hernia, heartburns from IBS, heart palpitations. That's what got me, because I was severely magnesium deficient and didn't know it until I started writing the Magnesium Miracle book back in the 90s in Manhattan.
So when you started writing the book, you found out about yourself?
I did.
Your health issues?
I mean, I'd had my medical training, my naturopathic. I knew about magnesium from naturopathy, but certainly not from med school. They just avoided it. They avoided something, let me repeat, that's important for 80% of known metabolic functions. So what did I do? I went out and got some magnesium when I started realizing, oh my gosh, my headaches and neck tension and insomnia and heart palpitations, leg cramps, Charlie horse leg cramps, they were all magnesium deficiency. So I tried it out and got some magnesium and immediately got the laxative effect from it.
Right.
So I was a poster child for the deficiency, plus for the people who just can't take it because of the laxative effect. And you know yourself that, we were kind of trained to say, well, when you get diarrhea from your magnesium, then you're saturated. Not true. So we've got people out there who can't take enough magnesium to deal with upwards of 68 known medical conditions. So you've got people with angina and palpitations, blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, all magnesium deficiency signs, symptoms, and conditions. They're misdiagnosed and given drugs for those conditions, and the drugs cause more magnesium deficiency.
Well, let's give one example real clearly, and I'm sure this has happened to several of many of our listeners. If you've had high blood pressure, gone to the doctor's office, historically, the first line of medication is a diuretic. And invariably, the diuretic causes you to waste and excrete magnesium. Now, magnesium is important because it causes relaxation of your arteries. And when the arteries relax, your pressure goes down. When the arteries tighten, your pressure goes up. When your arteries tighten in the heart, you get angina. When they relax, then your blood flows nicely. So what happens is you go to the doctor, and 25% of the time, the individual that's there has high blood pressure because they've got white coat syndrome. Pressure goes up. Doctor says, you got high blood pressure. We're going to put you on a diuretic. And sure enough, they urinate out all this magnesium, and they go back, and the pressure still goes up, and they put them on another medication, a beta blocker, or some other or ACE inhibitor, or some other medication. So it's the cycle. But in reality, all you need to do is to take magnesium. And in many of the cases, we found this here at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center, when individuals come in and they're on high blood pressure medication or have high blood pressure, routinely they have low magnesium. We will put them empirically on high doses of magnesium, tell them to exercise, get your weight down, and their blood pressures fall lovely.
But you know what also happens in that scenario? Yes, the white coat syndrome, the blood pressure is given diuretics, you deplete, you come back, and they put you on the ACE inhibitor and beta blocker. You come back 3 months later, and not only is your blood pressure not controlled, but you've also developed diabetes and high cholesterol, because magnesium deficiency leads to high cholesterol. Magnesium keeps the enzyme that makes cholesterol, keeps it in balance. The statin drugs, they kill that enzyme, whereas magnesium balances it. And diabetes, one of the signs, even in our medical text, diabetes is associated with low magnesium. But when you talk about the diuretic effect, they never tell patients that, oh, you're going to lose magnesium. They'll say you're going to lose potassium. So they tell people to take potassium in the form of bananas and oranges. But you can't absorb potassium unless you have sufficient amount of magnesium. And on it goes.
So tell us about some of the major health problems that you see in your practice and that you've addressed over your lifetime, major problems that magnesium has resolved.
Well, here's something actually I'll jump into because you'll be interested in this. When I work with people on picometer magnesium using a non-laxative magnesium, after a couple of months of just taking extra magnesium, people will say, oh my gosh, I'm getting a skin rash or I'm getting a coated tongue. People who are aware of yeast overgrowth will say, how come I'm getting yeast overgrowth? And what I think is happening is when magnesium is supporting the immune system to the extent that it's able to direct itself toward excess yeast overgrowth, and it starts killing off yeast, and you start getting yeast die-off, the Herxheimer effect. Right. You start getting rashes and itching and everything. Then we have to work on treating yeast, and I do that with silver and Saccharomyces boulardii and soil-based probiotics. I mean, there are ways to deal with these things. But it was fascinating to me, Dr. Hotze, that a person's immune system, when it's in a weakened condition, is going to allow the yeast to keep growing, and you keep feeling bad. That's what turns into chronic fatigue syndrome. That's what long COVID is now, is a combination of magnesium and mineral deficiencies and yeast overgrowth.
Very, very interesting on that. Tell us about the importance of magnesium in female menstrual disorders, particularly when women complain of mood swings, fluid retention, weight gain, headaches, migraine headaches. Tell us how magnesium, can it benefit those situations?
Oh, absolutely. What happens in the hormonal cycle is the week or so before menses, the hormones are elevated, and they cause kind of a burn off of magnesium. You really do need extra magnesium before the period to deal with the diuretic effect of the hormones and just the shifting, as well as the stress. The adrenal glands come into play. You're irritable, you're tight, you're tense. To me, so many of the PMS symptoms and the painful periods are related to magnesium deficiency. And it's all tied up in such a complex web that no one ever in allopathic medicine is going to get to the point where they deal with all these symptoms. But with PMS, menstrual dysmenorrhea, and with menopause, when women are saturated with enough magnesium, menopause symptoms go away. You're sleeping better. You're less irritable. Once your sleep is affected, all bets are off, because you just can't function during the day.
That's right.
And without magnesium, you don't have energy. You go to your doctor, you say, "Oh, I have no energy. I'm whatever." What do? They put you on antidepressants. And if you're tight and tense and anxious, they put you on anxiolytics. So again,
and they put you on sleep medication and a host of other drugs. And when you have side effects from those, they may put you on a second one. So when the real problem, it's the old Occam razor. This is what we're talking about. What is Occam razor? It's derived from a Greek. It's a Greek mythology term that really says the easiest solution. Nobody has problems with premenstrual tension and migraine headaches and cramping and heavy bleeding or heart disease or high blood pressure, all these things, because they have low levels of blood pressure medication, or they have low levels of antidepressants, or low levels of anti-anxiety drugs, or low levels of sleep medication. There are simple problems that occur with a root cause, and the root cause can often be simply low magnesium. And when was the last time your doctor even checked you or even suggested, why don't we just try some magnesium? Let's get you on a good level of magnesium, and let's talk about that. I know that there's a product that you recommend that's a picometer, which is liquid, and it doesn't have the effect of causing loose stools. And there's some other products we use here at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. We recommend using either a magnesium glycinate or magnesium chelate. We use one of those two, trying to help people get their magnesium levels up. What sort of dosing do you recommend? How much magnesium do you recommend for a person to take?
It's so individual. I'm not a big person, but when I had to deal with my terrible heart palpitations, and, when you have heart palpitations, anything to do with the heart, it's like, emergency. So I was not able to take even a 50 milligram pill of a glycinate or a chelate or a taurate.
Really?
And I spent Yeah, I would get the laxative effect. So I was in a mess. And I spent 10 years after putting the Magnesium Miracle book out in early 2000, 10 years trying to find a company that would make a non-laxative magnesium. I finally had to do it myself, but at any rate, when I started self-testing this picometer stabilized ion of magnesium from a magnesium chloride compound. I mean, Dr. Hotze, this magnesium is so tiny that when you put something called a zetasizer laser beam through a Pyrex glass bottle of this picometer magnesium, it doesn't bounce off any material substance. So it's so tiny, it gets directly into the cells to do its work. And what do we know it's doing in there? Krebs cycle. Many of the steps in the glycolysis cycle and the Krebs cycle require magnesium. ATP energy should be labeled, and researchers say it should be ATP-MG. Because the magnesium is so important.
This is important. I talk about this with our listeners. Mm-hmm. Every one of our cells, folks, have power plants within them. They're known as mitochondria. You might remember that from high school biology. Some cells have multiple, even hundreds or thousands, like heart cells have huge amounts of mitochondria within the cells because the heart's beating every second. You're having a heartbeat or more. So you expend a tremendous amount of energy. In order to produce energy within those cells, you have to have nutrients, you've got to have hormones, and you've got to have vitamins and minerals. And a key mineral in the production of electricity within these power plants, your cells produce electrical current. It's called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. It carries the electrons to the biochemical processes within the cells so these processes can function and you can make the proteins you need or whatever products the cell needs to make at that point. The magnesium is critical in the production of that energy molecule, ATP, carrying so magnesium is critical to that. When you don't have enough magnesium, then you're not going to be able to produce as much energy within your cells. You'll only be able to produce.
And you know what they're saying about mitochondrial disease right now. They're trying to equate it with so many conditions. Well, they're saying that, maybe it's a buildup of calcium in the mitochondria. What does that trigger? It triggers the fact that if you have enough magnesium, calcium is solubilized in the body, in the blood, in the cells, and magnesium actually directs calcium to the bones and teeth. So if you don't have enough magnesium, you're going to build up calcium in your cells because magnesium is the gatekeeper of calcium getting in and out of cells.
Now, this is very important. This is important because we recommend high doses of vitamin D. I personally take 25,000 international units a day just to get my level up around 100. And vitamin D is absolutely critical. We recommend most of our guests to start at least on 10,000 international units with K2. We monitor that and adjust it accordingly. But vitamin D can raise calcium levels, and magnesium, you say, is important to help monitor and correct calcium excess. Is that true? And drive it into the bone.
Absolutely. But even more important, Dr. Hotze, is the fact that magnesium is necessary to activate vitamin D.
Right.
So what happens when you're taking high doses of vitamin D, and I came across this in my customers when they'd come back to me and say, I've got all my magnesium deficiency symptoms back. And I'd say, what have you been doing? Oh, well, I'm taking 50,000 units of vitamin D. My doctor says I need it. So what happens is excess vitamin D, or let's just say high dose vitamin D, will pull all the magnesium into itself to activate it and leave you lacking in other parts of your body. People will say they'll go and sit in the sun for a week and start getting their magnesium deficiency symptoms because they've activated so much vitamin D. So you absolutely have to take a non-laxative, high-dose magnesium along with vitamin D.
Right, that's a key point. Now, you've written a major book earlier in your career called The Magnesium Miracle, but just recently you've written another book, and that's entitled The Magnesium, the Missing Link of Total Health. Now, where can our listeners go to purchase these books?
Well, they're both on Amazon right now, Dr. Hotze. It's really quite amazing because when the FDA decided to strip Dr. Joseph Mercola of his bank accounts, we were concerned about what was happening in the supplement industry, and our constitutional lawyer said you cannot mention your product names in your interviews or in your books. So I've had to rewrite the missing link to total health to avoid the FDA. So it's on pre-order, but I've been doing a number of interviews about the contents of the book, and we've already touched on so many of them. So the book's on pre-order, and it should be out within the month.
Well, now you have the Magnesium Miracle, which is still available. So I want to encourage you also to go to her website, which is Carolyn Dean, drcarolyndean.com, to get more information about magnesium and order her book and consider starting on a good magnesium supplement program. Dr. Dean, I am so grateful for the work you've done. It's been very influential in our practice here at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. And thank you for being with us today. God bless you, and God bless each and every one of you. If you want to get on a path of health and wellness, don't hesitate to give us a call here at the Hotze Health and Wellness Center. Thanks again. Bye now.
Did you know that pharmacists are considered the most accessible healthcare professionals, and yet at the same time we are generally the most underutilized? Pharmacists are medication experts, which means that we can best advise you on the safe and appropriate use of your medications, when to take them and how to take them. We're experts in pharmacology, which means that we receive extensive training to understand the science behind how medications work within the body. We screen for any interactions which may occur between the medications you're taking, and we have an in-depth understanding of how these medications affect each system of the body. Your body is unique, which means that the type and dose of medication you take should also be unique. We want you to know that at Physician's Preference Pharmacy, we are always available to you, and we welcome your questions.
Information provided on this program is neither intended nor implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice and is not intended to replace the services of a physician, nor does it constitute a doctor-patient relationship. You should not use information from this radio program to diagnose or treat a health problem or disease without consulting with a qualified healthcare provider. If you have or suspect you have an urgent medical problem, promptly contact a professional healthcare provider or call 911. Dr. Hotze's Wellness Revolution advises you to always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health provider prior to starting any new treatment or with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Any application of the recommendations from this program is at the listener's discretion.